like 70% of the blacks that lived in the Deep South, she relied on a bus for transportation. So she put her 10 cents in, but she wasn't allowed to walk down the aisle because she was black. She had to get off the bus and she had to enter through the back door. Now the bus driver's name was James Blake, and he was not a nice man because one other time she put her money in. When she headed to the back of the bus, he took off on her. This was not uncommon during the Jim Crow era for these bus drivers to do this. So she didn't like this guy and she avoided him, but this particular day she had worked late and she really wasn't paying attention. She just put her money in and she starts heading to the back. Now, she's not allowed to sit in this section at all. This is whites only. From here to here, you can be black or white, but if you're black, you can't sit next to, across from, or in front of a white person. The back of the bus is blacks only. Now, court document support. Raise your hand. That's where she was. Raise your hand. That's where she was sitting when 3 stops down, a white male got on the bus. You want to just have a seat? Yes. Now, he couldn't sit in any of these seats because they were all taken. She was here with 3 other blacks. He could have sat behind her, but the law did not allow for a white person to sit behind a black person. So the bus driver that also acted as a sheriff, carried a gun on him, they all did, said you have to move. The other 3 moved reluctantly, but she refused because this is a story of courage and standing up for what you believe in is right. And she believed she should have been able to sit where she wanted to on the bus. Well, she ends up getting arrested and convicted of disorderly conduct on December 5th of 1955. That means she was misbehaving. Now, the other sections of the museum, which you saw of the civil rights portion, you saw different drinking fountains, you saw different waiting rooms, there were different churches, there were different schools, there were separate shopping areas. Everything was segregated black and white. But what bothered them the most was the fact they couldn't sit where they wanted to on the bus. So what they did is they recruited a 26-year-old black male minister, and his name was Martin. That's right, he's Martin Luther King, and he led the boycott. Do you know what I mean by boycott?
I think it was like doing like something like where we made something wrong, like
Well, no.
like a protest.
Exactly. So what the protest, what do you think the protest was? That's right. The protest was, we're not going to ride this bus. If we're not going to be able to ride this bus and sit where we want, we're not riding it at all. So for 381 days, they walked, they hitched a ride, they took a taxi, and rode a bike, whatever, but they weren't on this bus, okay? And it wasn't until this bus company almost lost all its money and went bankrupt, but it was December of 1956 when the Supreme Court ruled you have to desegregate these buses. That means you have to let people sit where they want. It doesn't matter what color their skin is. And it was not based on Rosa Parks' case. It was based on 4 black women whose case led through the courts before hers. Because you must remember there were many people before and after her had the exact same problem. The difference with her case is hers fueled the boycott and the civil rights movement. So when you look at that picture of her over there and she's sitting in front of a white male, that happened after the desegregation, and that was a photo shoot for a magazine. But her problems just began because she got threatened, her husband got threatened, they both lost their jobs, they left Alabama, they moved to Detroit where they spent the majority of their life because they had family here. He died first. She died at the age of 92 in 2005. In 2001 was when we received this bus. It was 70% intact, it was 20% renovated, and it was 10% new. And it was at the back of the museum, and we had gotten grants to fix this bus up so that it was in the shape that it was in when she wrote it. And there was a day that she came in because they were celebrating her, and they wheeled her over so she was able to see the bus prior to her death. Now, when she did die, some of you remember they took her down to Alabama. She's one of 6 civilians that have died in honor at the Capitol, 4 Capitol police officers, Billy Graham, only 1 female, Rosa Parks, mother of the Freedom Movement. They brought her back to the African American Museum in Detroit, and they requested that this artifact be with her at the time of her death, and the Henry Ford moved it so it was with her when she died. Now, had she lived 3 more years, she would have lived to see a black man become president of the United States, but she died before Barack Obama was inaugurated. In 2012, he came to the museum because he loved all things Lincoln, and he sat on the bus, but when he sat down, and they told him where she was sitting, he sat opposite, he sat right where you're sitting. And he did that out of respect for her, okay? Now, a lot of people ask about this bus, and they want to know, how do you know this is the actual bus? Because there is a replica of this bus in Montgomery, Alabama, and in Memphis, Tennessee. They may or may not tell you that it's a replica, because I've had people come in and tell me they were sitting on the bus, and I got to break the news to them that they weren't. The Henry Ford has written letters and told them to cease and desist. But here at the Henry Ford, we have 26 million artifacts. Only 17% are on display at any given time, and they are authentic. There is a handful of things, I would say around 6 or less in this museum that are replicas, and we will tell you they're replicas. One of the largest is the Wright Brothers plane that was built in 2003 for the 100th anniversary of the 120-foot flight. The original one sits in the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. The difference between the 2 planes is as ours flies and theirs doesn't. This is a 1948 GM bus built in Pontiac, Michigan. It was retired in 1971. And a man from Montgomery, Alabama bought this bus and he tore these seats out, okay? Because he wanted to use the bus to store his lumber and his tools in it, okay? And I guess somebody told me from the South that's not uncommon that they do that. But he also knew something about this bus that a lot of people did not know. And that was, oops, sorry, honey. That was at this 2857 here that you see. This is original, and he knew when he bought this bus, he had the Rosa Parks bus. So when he died, the daughter and son-in-law also knew that, and they figured, hey, put it out on the internet, we're going to make some big bucks, and it didn't move. It sat in the field. Because there was no documentation that this was the actual bus. They had no paperwork. Until a scrapbook surfaced that this Mr. Cummings had kept track of this bus and everything about it. And the Henry Ford sent a curator down to verify. That's when they knew that this was the actual bus, and there was a bidding war that went on between the Smithsonian Institute, the city of Denver that was building a civil rights museum, and the Henry Ford that won out. So it was built here, headed south, retired right home in Michigan. Last thing I want to tell you is about Cleveland Avenue. That's on the outside of the bus. A lot of people ask about that. She lived on Cleveland Avenue in Montgomery, Alabama, and it was a busy street like Woodward Avenue in Detroit. Her incident happened in 1955. By 1965, they changed the street name to Rosa Parks Avenue in her honor. Here in Detroit, we have Rosa Parks Boulevard, we have the Rosa Parks bus station, we have Rosa Parks Avenue. So it's a tricky Jeopardy question if it comes up.
What was the one winning bid? When Henry Ford won?
It's right under 500,000. You can Google it. We're not supposed to tell you, but it was just under 500,000. Yeah, something 490. I thought it was 497 or 490 something. But if you're finished, take a look at the bus and then head off through the back so I can get the next crew of people.